Hello, I'm Neville, and I reside in Jacksonville, Florida. Having recently graduated, I must admit that it was one of the most challenging years I've ever faced. The entire experience seemed like a whirlwind of tasks, examinations, and classes that I struggled to manage. However, it was the sole opportunity that could pave the way for a brighter future. Without that, my options would have been confined to laboring in construction or operating a truck. I have nothing against those positions, but they simply weren't suited for me. My childhood aspirations didn't revolve around constructing homes or transporting goods nationwide. Indeed, I persevered through the endless nights of studying, perpetually fatigued with a singular aim, to earn that degree, secure a respectable job, and steer clear of those unfulfilling paths. At long last, it occurred. I have completed my graduation. It was a thrilling yet daunting experience. The sense of relief washed over me, yet a persistent thought lingered in the recesses of my mind: what comes next? I hold a degree in business administration. The subsequent step involved securing employment, correct? I submitted my resume to several organizations, primarily larger firms. Initially, there was no response. Anxiety crept in as I pondered whether I had chosen the right path with my degree or if I truly measured up. Suddenly, I received a call from one of the larger companies I had submitted my application to. They expressed their appreciation for my resume and invited me for an interview. It was beyond my comprehension. My heart raced with anxiety, yet a flicker of optimism lingered within me. I donned my finest suit, practiced my responses, and hoped fervently that I wouldn't stumble. The interview was a success. Thank goodness. The individuals appeared to be pleasant. The organization appeared to be quite professional, and they appreciated the enthusiasm I contributed. A few days later, the email arrived. I received an offer for an internship. The twist? 30 days. To some, a month may appear fleeting, but for me, it encompassed everything. This was my moment, and I was determined not to squander it. I had a month to demonstrate that I could offer more than simply being the newcomer in the office. It was both exhilarating and daunting simultaneously. The internship offered no financial compensation, yet it didn't bother me at all. I was resolute in my mission to demonstrate my value, eager to show them that I could contribute meaningfully, regardless of any compensation. The initial day felt like a whirlwind. I arrived early, attempting to mask my eagerness, though it was palpable. The office exceeded my expectations in size. Chic and contemporary, bustling with individuals who exuded an air of confidence and composure. I make an effort to avoid appearing startled, yet I was acutely aware that I likely resembled one. Nevertheless, I refused to let that hinder my progress. I was present to absorb knowledge, to exert my utmost effort, and to demonstrate my rightful place among them. The initial week focused on acclimating to the office environment, connecting with the team, and understanding the fundamentals. It lacked any sense of glamour. I was managing documents, sorting through files, responding to calls, and doing everything I could to contribute effectively. It was not an issue for me. It was all part of the journey, but goodness, was it exhausting. This pace was unfamiliar to me, and the pressure to get everything right was intense. The persistent sensation of being observed, yet I found it oddly comforting. I persevered, fully aware that a month was a fleeting moment, and I couldn't bear to squander even a single second of it. I poured everything I had into it, yearning to demonstrate my worth before the month came to a close. I was resolute in my intention to seize every opportunity. This internship might just be the highlight of it all. The following evening, after yet another grueling day at the office, I sank into my couch, utterly drained. I powered up my laptop, browsed through social media, and attempted to relax. My mind was still buzzing with reports, meetings, and the new faces I'd encountered throughout the day, yet I craved a moment of relaxation to escape the clutches of work, even if just for a few minutes. At that moment, my phone vibrated. A fresh communication. I opened it, anticipating a message from a friend or perhaps a random notification, but to my surprise, it was from an unknown number. Intrigued, I gently pried it open. It was an image, my image. I blinked, striving to grasp the scene before me. I found myself in the office locker room. I recall the moment I removed my jacket and was fiddling with my shirt as someone walked by. It may not have been the most glamorous moment, yet there's no reason to feel ashamed. It felt peculiar to witness myself in such an unguarded moment. The surroundings weren't quite the ideal setting I would have preferred for anyone to witness me in, either. Merely a standard office locker room. Nothing out of the ordinary. This is certainly not the type of image I would have opted to reveal. I gazed at the image for a few moments. Perhaps it was intended as humor. A colleague of mine. It's pretty typical for spots like this to play tricks on the newcomers, isn't it? They enjoy playing small tricks or teasing them. Perhaps that was indeed the situation. I aimed to keep my response measured. I swiftly crafted a reply, aiming for a laid-back tone without appearing too concerned. Sure, I may not appear my best, but it's really not as dire as it appears. I pressed send and then sat there, fixated on the screen. The identity of the sender was unclear, yet the message appeared to be innocuous. However, a response arrived almost instantly. To my astonishment, it turned out to be far more intimate than I had expected. Surprisingly, you appear quite appealing in this one. I find it quite enjoyable. I stood still, my eyes fixed on the message for what felt like an eternity. This was no mere jest, then. It was evident that someone had invested their time in sending this to me, and the sender appeared to possess a certain level of interest. But who is it? The number was unfamiliar to me. Could it have been one of my coworkers? Did someone work in the office? A sense of confusion washed over me. The following morning, I made an effort to set the incident aside in my thoughts. I headed to the office, immersed in the familiar routine, striving to concentrate on my tasks at hand. As the clock approached mid-morning, I found myself by the coffee machine. I caught a glimpse of her, Margaret. She approached me with an effortless grace that was unmistakable. She held the title of the boss's wife. To be truthful, that didn't truly impact me. The impact was in her appearance. Margaret, though in her late 30s, appeared as if she were in her 20s. She exercised regularly, prioritized self-care, always appeared flawlessly styled, and possessed a radiant quality that caught everyone's attention. As she entered the room, my heart began to race with each step she took toward me. I was uncertain about the reason. I had noticed her in the past, yet this encounter carried a distinct sense of significance. She approached me with a smile and said, "You really looked great in that photo yesterday." Her voice flowed effortlessly, exuding confidence, with a hint of playfulness. I paused for a moment, my thoughts racing to find the link. Suddenly, it dawned on me. The message, the photo, it was unmistakably her. It was inevitable. It was Margaret who had sent it. My astonishment was palpable, leaving me uncertain about my response. I stumbled over my words, managing to say something like, "Oh, really?" I found it to be rather underwhelming. I found myself at a loss for words. She appeared unfazed by my clumsiness, however. She offered a smile once more, this time with a hint of mystery, as if she held a secret I was yet to uncover. "I must say, you appeared quite impressive." She spoke in a relaxed tone, then added, "Anyway, see you later, Neville." In an instant, she pivoted and strode away, leaving me rooted in place, grappling with the bewilderment of the moment that had just unfolded. Did I conjure this in my mind? Did she truly just throw out a compliment like that? What is the reason behind that? What was the purpose of all this? My mind was whirling as I returned to my desk. As I attempted to concentrate on my tasks, my mind kept drifting to her radiant smile, the way her words lingered in the air, and the unforgettable gaze she had cast in my direction. Countless questions swirled in my mind, yet answers eluded me. Uncertainty loomed over me, yet an instinct whispered that this encounter with Margaret was far from over. Several days went by, and the atmosphere at the office returned to its familiar cadence. The astonishment of Margaret's remark and the enigma enveloping the photograph gradually receded into the periphery. I immersed myself in my tasks, striving to concentrate on the responsibilities before me, the looming deadlines, and the incessant flow of emails. I preferred not to dwell too much on the details. Ultimately, I was still finding my footing in this corporate landscape, and I understood the importance of demonstrating my capabilities. Margaret, in contrast, appeared to have returned to her familiar demeanor. She exuded professionalism. The light-hearted exchanges had faded away, and the remarks about the picture had ceased. It felt like there had been no connection at all between us. She treated me just like she treated everyone else. During her internship, she would offer a smile and a brief greeting as she walked by, but it remained strictly within the bounds of professionalism. It was supposed to put me at ease, wasn't it? Yet beneath the surface, a persistent curiosity remained. Was that moment merely a passing occurrence? Or could there be something deeper? I found it impossible to shake the thought, yet I made an effort to do so. My tasks were my sole focus, and that was what truly counted. One afternoon, I found myself at my desk, sifting through some documents, when I caught sight of Margaret approaching me. She moved forward with her characteristic confidence, hands empty, but demeanor full of assurance. I anticipated her usual swift passage, but to my surprise, she halted before me, her gaze sweeping the room momentarily before settling on my eyes. "Neville," she spoke, her tone steady yet earnest. "Could you please come here for a moment?" My heart raced with excitement. What could be the reason for her summoning me? Was there an issue? I trailed behind her to a more secluded area of the office, where she presented me with a neatly folded piece of paper. "Have a look at this," she said, her voice now more gentle. "If you seek something a tad more unconventional, I shall be here, ready and waiting." I received the note from her, feeling perplexed. What was this all about? A hidden communication? A test of skill? The message was straightforward. Only a handful of lines crafted in tidy script. Recreation area. 8:30 p.m. Please ensure you arrive on time. No additional details were provided. No elaboration needed. Thoughts surged through my mind. What is she referring to? Is there something out of the ordinary? What was the significance of that? What makes me the one? What is the reason for this moment? Was she putting me to the test? Engaging in a game of some kind? Was this truly an authentic invitation? A cautionary note? I was completely unaware. I looked up at her, yearning for a clue of some sort. Yet Margaret's expression remained neutral, impossible to decipher. She offered me a brief smile, then turned and departed without uttering another word. I lingered for a moment, gazing at the note. My stomach twisted with doubt. Unbeknownst to me, I was stepping into uncharted territory, yet an undeniable allure drew me in. Margaret held the position of the boss's wife. She possessed all that one could desire. What could be her reason for contacting me, and why in this particular manner? After a brief moment of reflection, I reached a decision. I needed to leave. However, I would exercise caution. I wasn't going to dive headfirst into something without understanding what lay ahead. As the minutes passed, the hands of the clock inched closer to 8:30 p.m. I ventured to the park, striving to maintain control over my wandering thoughts. Could this have been orchestrated? A snare? Or could it have been something completely different? The park was serene, just as anticipated. It was one of those hidden gems, nestled away from the typical throngs of people. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in a tapestry of orange and purple hues. The atmosphere was crisp, and the park lay nearly deserted. Only the gentle whisper of leaves and the faint murmur of the city in the distance. I strolled down the path, my gaze sharp and attentive. I aimed to avoid any surprises. The atmosphere was charged with an unsettling tension. Everything seemed shrouded in mystery. And then I beheld her. Margaret perched on a bench at the heart of the park, her gaze drifting into the horizon. She appeared serene and collected, as though anticipating an event or a visitor. It was difficult to fathom that this was the same woman who had handed me that enigmatic note earlier. For a brief moment, I found myself at a crossroads, uncertain about my next move. Should I make a move towards her? Should I simply pivot and walk away? Yet, an undeniable force within me propelled me onward. I approached her, my steps gentle upon the lush green grass. As I approached, she tilted her head just enough for our eyes to connect. Her gaze held no surprise, no tension, only a serene acknowledgement. "Neville," she repeated, a subtle smile playing on her lips this time. "It brings me joy that you arrived." I found myself at a loss for words. The atmosphere was dense, brimming with an unarticulated tension. A peculiar blend of thrill and wariness stirred within me. What was the purpose of all this? Margaret gestured invitingly to the empty spot beside her on the bench. "Come sit," she said, her voice soft and welcoming. I inhaled deeply and settled beside her, my thoughts swirling with inquiries. What brings her here? What was she seeking from me? Was this merely a chance encounter, or could it signify the start of something greater? For an extended period, silence enveloped us. We lingered in silence, observing as the final glimmers of daylight slipped into the horizon. The gentle whisper of leaves dances through the air, accompanied by the faint, far-off murmur of the city. At last, Margaret shattered the stillness. "I wanted to see if you were curious enough to come," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It appears that you are indeed." I was at a loss for words. What was I meant to respond to that? I found myself seated, anticipating the unfolding of whatever lay ahead. The stillness enveloped us for a brief while, extending in the soft glow of the park's twilight. The sole sound was the gentle rustling of leaves accompanied by the refreshing evening breeze. And yet, an unmistakable tension lingered in the atmosphere. Margaret maintained her gaze forward, her eyes gentle yet intent. I found myself at a loss, uncertain of my next steps. The situation was still unfolding in my mind. What could have prompted her to choose this particular location for our meeting? Could this merely be a strange coincidence, or was she attempting to convey a message without uttering a word? I adjusted my position on the bench, seeking comfort, yet it proved to be a challenge. I felt a mix of tension and curiosity. There was an undeniable allure in her presence that captivated me. It wasn't merely the circumstance of her being the boss's wife. Her warmth was undeniable, yet there lingered an additional quality, one that felt deeply personal and intimately close. Margaret tilted her head just enough, and for the very first time, her gaze locked onto mine. Her gaze held a certain tenderness, intertwined with an elusive quality that I struggled to identify. She smiled, though it was far from a conventional courteous grin. It felt as though she perceived something within me that I had yet to recognize in myself. "You know," she said softly, her voice weaving through the stillness of the evening air. "I have been observing you closely. Your presence radiates a unique energy. It's more than merely the task at hand. It's about the manner in which you present yourself, the attitude you bring to various situations. You stand apart from the rest." I found myself at a loss for words in that moment. I shifted awkwardly, a warm flush creeping across my face. Was she praising me? It was a compliment that felt foreign to me, particularly coming from someone of her stature. I had to concede, there was an undeniable quality in her speech that compelled attention. She pivoted to confront me completely. At that moment, her gaze was firmly fixed on me. A subtle suggestion of a smile danced at the edges of her lips, yet it was more than merely a smile. It felt as though she was relishing the moment, relishing the dialogue. "Neville, your dedication is truly commendable." She maintained a low voice, yet exuded confidence. "I understand that. And it demonstrates that you're on the path to success. Your potential is evident, and it seems you have a bright future ahead. These large corporations, they will take notice of you. They'll be eager to have someone like you join their ranks. A person who excels in their craft, who truly distinguishes themselves, and possesses an undeniable passion." A wave of pride and unease surged within me. It felt peculiar. Upon hearing her words, I found myself at a loss for how to respond. On one side, her encouragement was something I truly valued. Yet, it seemed as though there was a deeper meaning behind her words. As if there were deeper layers waiting to be uncovered. Margaret's eyes grew tender as she pressed on. It's more than merely the work at hand. It revolves around your identity. I can perceive that within you. Your heart is truly admirable, Neville. You are authentic. Such occurrences are uncommon. She lowered her voice and leaned in just a bit. Her body language transformed, igniting a flutter in my chest. You're destined for success. I am completely confident in that. All it takes is a bit more faith in your own abilities. I found myself at a loss for words. Thoughts surged through my mind. Could this truly be unfolding? What could have prompted her to speak to me in this manner? Was she merely showing kindness? Or could there have been another factor at play? I gazed at her, attempting to decipher her expression, yet it proved difficult to understand. She exuded a serene composure, yet there was an intensity in her gaze, an unspoken depth that suggested she conveyed more than mere words could express. She inclined her head just a bit, her smile expanding ever so gently. There's an admirable quality about you, Neville, that truly stands out to me. Your relentless spirit, your unwavering determination to keep moving forward. It's uncommon. Your strength speaks volumes in its subtlety. I appreciate that. I took a deep breath, striving to maintain my calm. Her words carried a certain weight, a quality that felt almost personal. It was a praise. Absolutely. Yet, it seemed to transcend that. Her voice had taken on a lower, softer quality, imbuing the words with a sense of weight, a deeper significance. Her message was unclear, yet it undeniably stirred emotions within me that I hadn't anticipated. For a moment, silence enveloped us as we sat together, the stillness of the park surrounding us like a comforting embrace. Her presence enveloped me, so near that I could almost sense the warmth emanating from her. It was peculiar, disquieting, yet there was an undeniable allure to it. Something that continually captivated my attention. Despite my inner voice urging caution, I pressed on. I believe you will succeed. She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. At this moment, Neville, you truly embody the essence of goodness. Make sure to keep that in mind. And when you achieve great success, when you're at the helm of those enterprises, remember your roots. I found myself at a loss for words in response to that. It seemed as though she was about to share something significant, yet I found myself uncertain about my readiness to receive it. I found myself unprepared to face the complexities of what was unfolding between us. I nodded slowly, attempting to maintain my concentration, as if something was unfolding around me. Thank you, Margaret. That holds significant value. She offered that familiar, gentle smile, full of understanding. I have faith in you. Always keep that in mind. With that, she rose from the bench, her movements imbued with a fleeting grace and intention. I stood there, watching her retreat, feeling uncertain about the exchange we just had. Was it a compliment, a warning, or perhaps something altogether different? While uncertainty lingered, one truth stood clear. The situation was undeniably becoming intricate. Following our chat in the park, I found myself uncertain about what would come next. Margaret's words echoed in my thoughts. As I strolled back to my apartment, a wave of uncertainty washed over me. Had I misinterpreted the situation, or was I just spiraling into overanalysis? Yet, even as my thoughts spun in a haze of uncertainty, a part of me sensed that a change had occurred. An unmistakable tension lingered between us, leaving me uncertain about how to traverse it. A few days later, Margaret came to me once more, this time with an invitation that completely caught me off guard. She inquired whether I would be interested in accompanying her for dinner at a quaint restaurant close by. It was a laid-back proposal, yet there was an intriguing quality in her tone. It was as though she anticipated my agreement. She simply remarked, "It's just a quiet place." After a lengthy week, I figured it would be pleasant to relax a bit. I must admit, I was taken aback. I never thought she would want to hang out with me beyond the office, but the notion was oddly captivating, and despite my reservations, I found myself saying yes. In the end, it was merely a dinner, wasn't it? Upon reaching the restaurant, we found a charming little place nestled on a serene street. The atmosphere was laid back, with soft lighting casting a gentle glow and a selection of soothing melodies drifting through the air. The ambience was ideal for relaxing and engaging in a meaningful dialogue. As we nestled into a cozy booth, the dialogue unfolded effortlessly. Margaret recounted tales from her past, reflecting on her youth, her aspirations, and the decisions that shaped her journey to the present moment. Her words had a certain allure, a natural ease that enveloped her, even when she delved into topics that were far from simple. I discovered that I was revealing more than I had planned. We discussed my journey, the choice I made to chase this internship, against all odds, and the sacrifices I endured throughout the process. It was as if we were two souls exchanging tales from distinct journeys, discovering unexpected connections in the most unlikely places. As time passed, the dialogue transitioned to more cheerful subjects. We chuckled over amusing workplace stories, exchanged thoughts on trivial matters that brought us joy. A glass of wine became two, and soon enough, I found myself completely at ease, as if I had known her for much longer than the reality of our brief acquaintance. It was one of those rare instances when everything seemed to flow effortlessly. As the evening progressed and the restaurant started to clear out, Margaret cast a glance my way, a subtle smile playing on her lips. A hint of mischief danced across her features, a newfound playfulness emerging. "You know, Neville," she said, leaning in a bit, "I'm not quite ready for the night to come to a close. What do you think about heading to a more secluded spot?" Her suggestion took me by surprise. A fragment of my mind wavered, the logical part cautioning me that I was stepping into uncharted territory. Yet, in that instant, I found myself wishing for the night to linger on. The wine had left me in a fog, yet her presence wrapped around me like a warm blanket, offering a solace I hadn't anticipated. "What location are you considering?" I inquired, my tone softer than I had meant it to be. I realized that by posing the question, I was exposing myself to an unknown realm, yet in that moment, it didn't seem to matter to me. "A location exists in close proximity," she responded with a playful grin. "I assure you it will be much more laid back." I concurred. Before I realized it, we found ourselves driving to a quaint motel located just beyond the town's edge. Though I was unfamiliar with the place, the tranquility of the surroundings had a strangely comforting effect. Within the confines of the room, simplicity reigned supreme. There was nothing extravagant, yet the ambience exuded a sense of closeness. Our dialogue flowed on, yet it had now ascended to a new dimension. An unspoken understanding lingered between us, an undercurrent that neither of us could overlook. As the evening progressed, I discovered myself engaging in an activity I never would have anticipated. Being with her felt utterly instinctive, as if it were the most organic experience imaginable. Although I was aware, beneath the surface, that it was anything but that. It was never my plan for events to unfold in this manner. Yet here I found myself, uncertain of how to bring it to a halt or if I truly desired to do so. The following morning, I stirred awake in a vacant room. As I blinked, a wave of confusion washed over me. Margaret had vanished without a trace. I rubbed my eyes, attempting to dispel the lingering traces of slumber, yet the weight of the situation struck me with undeniable force. The clock caught my eye, reading 8:15 a.m. I arrived at work later than expected. A wave of anxiety washed over me. In the dim light of the motel room, urgency gripped me, compelling me to gather my things and make haste. As a summer intern, punctuality was crucial, particularly at this moment when I was eager to demonstrate my capabilities. In a flurry, I collected my belongings, thoughts swirling as I hurriedly put on my clothes and dashed toward the exit. I hardly had a moment to digest the events that unfolded, and truthfully, I was uncertain if I was prepared to do so. I was acutely aware that I needed to reach the office without delay. I navigated the road to work, my mind swirling with a flurry of questions. What just transpired? Was it a mistake? Is this what I truly desired? As time ticked away, my mind shifted from the events of the night to the urgency of reaching the office and salvaging what remained of my internship. As I drove into the parking lot, a profound heaviness settled in my chest. Being late was simply not an option for me. I couldn't afford to make a mistake here. Not at this moment. Not when everything had been unfolding so beautifully. I inhaled deeply, squared my shoulders, and exited the car, prepared to confront whatever challenges the day had in store, regardless of how intricate things had already turned. As I drove into the parking lot, a tightness gripped my stomach. I struggled to exit the car and make my way toward the building. With each step, the weight seemed to increase, pressing down more than before. As I neared the entrance, an undeniable sense washed over me, hinting that today would unfold in a way unlike any other. I was stepping into the office with purpose. I found myself heading directly towards what I believed would mark the conclusion of my internship. Upon stepping into the building, the peculiar hush immediately caught my attention. The familiar buzz of life felt far away, nearly non-existent. It felt like an unspoken awareness lingered in the air, as if everyone sensed that something was on the horizon. There was an understanding that still eluded me. My thoughts were still ensnared in the happenings of the previous night, and I was struggling to maintain my composure. Just as I was about to settle in at my desk, a message came through. My boss, Mr. Jackson, requested my presence in his office. At once. It was immediately clear to me what that signified. I was completely at a loss regarding how to tackle this situation. A part of me yearned to flee, to pivot and escape, yet I understood that such a choice was not available to me. I had to confront the reality of the situation. I approached Mr. Jackson's office with a deliberate slowness, each step heavy with the weight of uncertainty about my future as an intern here. I found myself uncertain about how to brace for whatever words he might utter. I was completely in the dark about how he found out what transpired with his wife, yet he seemed to know, and a wave of fear washed over me at the thought that this could spell the end of my career here. Upon arriving at his office, I inhaled deeply and gently tapped on the door. The voice from beyond beckoned, inviting me to enter. I pushed the door ajar and entered the room. Mr. Jackson sat behind his desk, his demeanor more solemn than I had ever witnessed before. His gaze held a fierce intensity, and I felt the palpable weight of his stare as I lingered in the doorway for a moment. Silence enveloped us both. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, nearly overwhelming. At last, Mr. Jackson broke his silence. His voice carried a serene quality, yet a sharpness lingered beneath the surface. "Neville," he started. "I am aware of the events that transpired yesterday. I possess all knowledge." The word struck me with the force of a blow to the abdomen. I remained motionless, uncertain of how to react. I anticipated fury. I anticipated shouting, yet what I encountered was something entirely different, this serene, composed presence that was far more unsettling than anything I could have envisioned. One can't help but be curious about the unfolding events that lie ahead. Mr. Jackson pressed on, his voice firm yet resolute. "I assure you," I pondered this extensively. I found myself unable to utter a word. I found myself speechless, uncertain of how to respond or what to express. Thoughts were swirling in my head. What was happening? Is this all there is? Was he really going to let me go? However, Mr. Jackson caught me off guard. "Neville," he remarked, inclining his body just a touch closer. "I want to assure you that your position is secure. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. You're now a valued member of the team." I gazed at him, unable to comprehend what I was witnessing. It felt like the ground had suddenly vanished beneath my feet. I had prepared for the worst, but this was something completely unexpected. "This may come as quite a surprise to you." He infused his expression with a touch of softness. "However, the reality is that you are not the first individual to find themselves entangled in such circumstances. My wife has experience with this." I was utterly astonished. His wife, Margaret, the very same woman who had been so playful and so bold. I found myself at a loss for words. It felt like a dream. I have endured her behavior for quite some time, Mr. Jackson remarked, his voice tinged with a hint of bitterness, but this time I'm finished. I am initiating the process of divorce. She's not the person I believed her to be, and I can no longer maintain the facade that everything is okay. I remained still, absorbing all that he had just shared with me. This caught me off guard. His calmness and composure in the face of betrayal took me by surprise. I was at a loss for how to respond. Is it appropriate for me to feel a sense of relief about retaining my job? Is guilt something I should be experiencing? Having been with his wife, I soon understood that the shock was fading, and this situation extended beyond my own feelings. You possess intelligence and a strong work ethic, Neville, Mr. Jackson remarked, his voice regaining its characteristic calmness. I recognize a great deal of promise within you. You've demonstrated your abilities impressively. That is precisely the reason I am offering you this opportunity. Make the most of it. His words struck me with an intensity one hadn't anticipated. I wasn't merely receiving another chance at the internship. A genuine opportunity for a future with this company was being presented to me. I had put in so much effort to reach this point, and now, for better or worse, this was the life I had created. Yet, as I stood there, nodding and absorbing his words, an unsettling feeling lingered in my chest. This circumstance was anything but typical. Despite Mr. Jackson appearing to extend a second chance to me, I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty as I exited his office, as if I had been granted a new lease on life at an undisclosed price. Yet, I sensed I was traversing a precarious path, uncertain of how long I could maintain my equilibrium. As I strolled back to my desk, I cast a fleeting look out the window, absorbing the panorama of the city. In a heartbeat, everything transformed. Amidst the turmoil, I stumbled upon my own path, despite the errors I had made. As for Margaret, that was a significant chapter in my life. I had my doubts about ever grasping it completely, yet one thing remained clear. The end had come,